What is up? Good morning, happy new year, and welcome to Monday's Hangxiety. This is Club Fantasy's weekly reaction show where myself and my good friend Josh Hudson go over all of this past week's action and tell you when it is time to relax. Or actually, no, when it's time to panic. Man, I can't even get my intro right this time. When it is time to panic and when it is time to chill the fuck out. Josh, I'm obviously discombobulated, not hungover, just out of sorts. How are you today?
I'm wishing I was hungover. For as pissed off as I am about this freaking championship week, I wish I was hungover right now. Because honestly, that's just how I feel mentally. What a fucking disappointing championship week. I'm all out of sorts. I have zero explanations. And we're gonna get into like some of the people that really sucked this past week.
Yeah.
And I swear to God, 90% of them were on my championship teams.
Yeah. Was that, I'm going to spoil a little bit. The thing you put in the show notes, is that one of your rosters?
Quite literally one of my starting championship
Well,
rosters.
then let me blow through this week of review because that's a story unto itself right there. Folks, if you've not tuned into the show before, welcome. What we do is we just kind of go over the action. We talk about the players who did well, players who did poorly, if this is something you need to be worried about for the future, if this is something you just need to chill the fuck out on. As always, I'm going to get the show started with a quick recap. So we are going to go back to the Thursday night game. Dallas bests a wounded Tennessee Titans team 27-13. That game essentially went the way we expected it to, especially with Tennessee opting at the last moment to start Josh Dobbs at quarterback after signing him like 8 days ahead of time. Then we jump to the Sunday games. The Falcons steal one from Arizona, 20-19. It was an ugly game with ugly quarterback play. The Patriots rob the Dolphins and stay alive, 23-21. The Saints double up the Eagles. More on that later, 20-10. The Giants just destroyed the Indianapolis Colts, 38-10. Tampa Bay, Mike Evans, he's going to come up. 30-24, Tampa Bay beats the Carolina Panthers and wins their division. The Kansas City Chiefs outlast a surging Denver Broncos team now that they have competent coaching, 27-24. Lions just boat race the Chicago Bears, 41-10. Again, the Bears want to lose. They want to improve that draft stock, but you do not want to get beat by a division rival, 41-10. The Browns and the Commanders run 41-10 was the last one. 24-10 is this one. Jaguars do exactly what they were supposed to. Maybe the only team who did what they were supposed to this week. 31-3 over the Houston Texans. The 49ers just barely survived the Las Vegas Raiders. 37-34 in overtime. The Seattle Seahawks beat down the Jets in Seattle 23-6. Ugly game there. The Packers just outclassed the Vikings 41-17. Justin Jefferson pour one out. The Los Angeles Chargers finally show up and they beat the Los Angeles Rams 31-10. And then the Steelers sneak past on the Najee Harris receiving touchdown 16-13 over the Baltimore Ravens in Sunday Night Football. This first segment of the show, it's going to be for the second straight week, a very disappointing one where my favorite player is going to get thrown under a bus, I'm pretty sure. Josh, it's up with the Birds. Let's talk about the Eagles.
We're not even up at this point. Like, this is the Eagles have been grounded, like straight up these last 2 weeks. I give Minshew props for the week against Dallas. He played his heart out. The turnovers are what killed us. Last week, yesterday, he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn.
And the turnovers
could not get the ball out. The pressure was there. It was pretty clear that this line was missing Lane Johnson. It was quite clear, but pressure was in his face. Getting Marshawn Lattimore back for the Saints was apparently huge. He had the pick six late in the game to kind of seal it. But like, as great as Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown were in this game, why was Nick Sirianni not running the football? Like, they came out running the football in the second half, and they had a couple big bursts by Miles Sanders. Dude had 12 rushes all game. Like, what are we doing? And it's not even like the Saints were blowing us out. This was still a fairly close game. It was a 2-score game all the way through. You can still establish the run, especially when you're gaining chunk plays like that. Miles was averaging close to 5 yards a carry, if not more, I believe. Overall, as a team, I think they were at a little over 4. But, like, you got to run the football. And they just refuse to do that at all with a guy that's 5th in the league in rushing. I don't get it. It was absolutely mind-blowing. The only real positive from this game, in my opinion, was that the Eagles officially became the first team in NFL history to have not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 guys on defense with 10-plus sacks. When Brandon Graham finally, and I think this is like his 15th year
Yeah.
Set a career high in sacks. I think he actually got a second one in the game too. So he's at like 10.5 or 11. But like, that was literally the only good thing that came out of this game. And and Ryan, I know we all love Minshew around here.
And I go in, but when you say it's the only good thing, that AJ Brown touchdown was a thing of beauty as well.
Oh, that was fantastic.
Yeah.
No, that was fantastic. But like it's to me, it's clear Minshew is a decent backup. He is not a starting quarterback in the NFL. And all this did right now is put Chris Sims and Micah Parsons in their place. Jalen Hurts is the MVP of this league. This offense does not work without him.
So where I'm going to fight you is Gardner Minshew is not as good as Jalen Hurts. Gardner Minshew is not a top 10 quarterback. Gardner Minshew is not a top 20 quarterback. He is a starting quarterback in this league, because you can't look at me and tell me Carson Wentz and Taylor Heineke are starting quarterbacks in this league and Gardner Minshew is not.
I mean, Minshew has pretty solid weapons, just like Washington does on offense. What the fuck has he done with him?
274 yards and a touchdown in this one. The offense was not called well, as you fully admitted. He didn't.
And two of these with a really good defense.
I don't know.
I mean, Carson Wentz is literally doing the same fucking thing. Who else? Like,
we're gonna fundamentally.
You got to win football games in the NFL. That's what it boils down to. The stats don't fucking matter at the end of the day.
The turnovers are an issue, and I'm gonna give you that.
Turnovers are an issue, the same way that they're an issue with Carson Wentz. The only big difference, Minshew was a 6th-round pick. Wentz was the number 2 overall pick. They're the same fucking quarterback.
Yeah, and one of them's a starter in the league and one isn't. And that's my argument, is he is.
I mean, is Wentz really a starter at this point?
Yes.
Ron Rivera almost yanked Carson Wentz yesterday.
Well, regardless of how you look at it, yes, they're starter. And that's what I'm saying. I think we're just disagreeing on the semantics of a starter in the league. But, I mean, you're not going to have 32 Jalen Hurts. That's why he's special. And so I still think Gardner Minshew is a starter.
He's a guy that's going to get yo-yoed his entire career.
That's
He's
fine.
a quality backup.
He's
that
Ryan
can keep you in games
2.0.
and pray to God your defense wins it. And yesterday, our defense couldn't do what it truly needed to do, which was create turnovers.
Yeah, it was certainly a rough outing. I knew that we were going to go in on Wentz on this one, especially when he essentially intercepted the game away with 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So not a good one there whatsoever. So we have some comments to get to. So we don't even have it started, but I'm going to go all the way back to Czar starting the show off because we weren't even in the room yet. But yeah, if you had this lineup going into the championship, you were very excited, and you are not excited this morning. And we're going to have more on that on Josh's segment here in just a second. So Czar, we feel your pain. I'm taking all the credit on this one.
Yeah, this is all you. And George, I'm going to get to it because I was very much against playing Mike Evans this week. But trust me, this is coming up later, George.
So in all fairness, as George expertly pointed out on Saturday, for a month, my story has been, I feel a big Mike Evans game.
It's been 2 months. It's been 2 months.
Well, I just been on the start-sit show because I've done it for about a month straight here towards the end of the season. And I kept telling people, I feel a big Mike Evans game. It had been building, clearly. It was just the pressure that needed to hit him. So he had all of those good games in one game. So we're going to talk more about that in a second. This one's rough. This is what this show is all about. It's
Danny Dimes had 90-plus yards and 2 rushing touchdowns.
Yep.
Why aren't those going to Saquon Barkley?
And what I love,
me 2 championships.
What I love though, Josh, is you have all of these things in the show notes for later as well. So, George, this is an interesting one because Josh does this great list of people who underperformed yesterday, and I noticed he didn't have Kelsey on the list, and I was about to go add him, but he had 7 catches for 47 yards, 11.7 in a PPR. It's not what you expect from Travis Kelsey, but by the rights of tight ends, did he underperform?
Well, and again, we're going to touch on this a little bit later.
Because it was a big tight end
10-plus
week.
Points from a tight end in week 17, not that big a deal. It was actually pretty common. So we'll circle back to that one.
Exactly. I'm rooting for you. I need Mike Evans-esque weeks from Gabe Davis and T. Higgins tonight. So we'll go with that one together. I also need it from Joe Mixon. So let's just hope the Bengals just go in on this one. And then this one is bothersome because I spend a lot of time defending Ron Rivera. A good friend of the show, Steve, likes to just shit on Ron Rivera, call him Jeff Fisher 2.0. It's not something I've ever agreed with. This is a problem. You cannot be the head coach, the actual head coach. This is Donovan McNabb not knowing a game could end in a tie-esque stupidity right here. I have a problem with this one. So
yeah, Rivera's, I think coaching has passed him by. He needs to join up with the 33rd team, become an analyst somewhere. Coaching is just it's passed him by at this point.
I mean, honestly, is not knowing you can be eliminated with a loss even analyst. Like, I think the 33rd team is more up on things than that. So
damn,
that's a problem, Rivera. But yeah, let's pour one out, Josh, because I was shocked when I read this in your notes, and I didn't know.
Yeah, so usually what I've been doing, is just kind of going through and finding, all the players that didn't hit 10 plus points. When I tell you that I had a shitty championship week, this is the personification of that. I literally just went up and down one of my championship rosters, okay? One of my championship rosters and said, this is the segment this week. I have a dynasty team with Ramondre Stevenson, Saquon Barkley, Justin Jefferson, Dallas Goedert, Jamar Chase. I also have Josh Jacobs and Geno Smith, but I'll get to those guys in a second. But this was my entire starting lineup. Mike White, 4.6 fantasy points. Stevenson, 7.1. Barkley, 7.3. McLaurin, 5.7. Jefferson, 2.5. Goddard, 7.5. Deontay Johnson, 5.5. Jamar Chase, to be determined. I currently have 40.2 fantasy points from that lineup in a championship game. Wow. What the actual fuck?
You're making a mockery of the championship at that point.
Like, yeah, exactly. This team basically, Jefferson has carried me into this championship game. Barkley carried me into this championship game. I've dealt with a plethora of injuries on this team. I've gotten lucky at running back. I decided that, we talked about this literally all week. Jacobs against the 49ers just felt awful. And you're likely not sitting him because you don't have better options. But, I felt like, Deontay Sunday night, they're going to throw the ball more. Maybe I'll take the shot there.
Yeah.
Obviously that was a bad move.
Oh,
I talked myself into Mike White over Geno. Granted, I have Russell Wilson on this team too, and Russell outscored all of them. But even if I'd started those guys, it would not have mattered. 40.25 fantasy points in a fucking championship game.
Yeah. The JJ shutdown thing was nuts. It certainly cost me a championship. Josh, I saw a very appropriate tweet, and it goes back to the Travis Kelce thing from earlier, but I think Justin Jefferson could easily be plugged in here. I saw a guy say, I was in 3 championships because of Travis Kelce. I am going to lose 3 championships because of Travis Kelce.
Yeah.
Just replace that with Justin Jefferson, and I think you're probably looking at every Justin Jefferson championship team in the entire world right now.
And I have another championship squad that has both Barkley and Justin Jefferson. Kirk Cousins was the quarterback in that one. Luckily, he ended up with at least one TD pass late in the game that, kind of salvaged the game. But Amon-Ra only had a little over 10 points. I got a halfway decent game from Chuba Hubbard. Mark Andrews popped. But that team fell flat too. And I'm just I'm sitting pretty. I'm like, man, I'm making myself some money in these championships. Okay, cool. And the only one that I have a legitimate shot to win, I need Josh Allen and Tyler Bass to combine for less than 43 fantasy points tonight, and I'll pull that one out. And I made every wrong decision in that league. I shouldn't even be in a shot to win it.
What I love, Josh,
it's terrible.
What I love is you illustrate something. And one thing that I always have enjoyed about being around Club Fantasy and with Club Fantasy is we 100% practice what we preach. In leagues where I stream tight end, I'm running my stream of the week out there every week. I'm not bullshitting you guys. But way more importantly, Josh, you mentioned you faded Josh Jacobs. We faded Josh Jacobs. I benched Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams because I told people to bench Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams. I for as right as I was about Mike Evans, I could not have been more wrong about Josh Jacobs, Austin Eckler, and Christian McCaffrey. Those games did not go nearly the way I expected those games to go, and I fell flat on my fucking face. Now, here's the thing. Nobody actually benched Christian McCaffrey, so I don't feel bad about it. If any of you benched Christian McCaffrey because of something I said, send me a screenshot and I will work out paying you your league fee back because I know you didn't do it.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing is like, you can sit there and say, oh, I don't think so-and-so is going to have a top 24 week this week, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, you probably don't have somebody better. Like, this is a dynasty team, so yeah, like, ideally, you do have some depth with decent players. And again, that's why I went Johnson over Josh Jacobs. Yeah. So, because I felt like, all right, maybe there's a little bit more upside with Deontay this week, even though he's been suspect really this whole season.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know how you could trust against that best, run defense in the league with a backup quarterback who hasn't started a game, has bounced around the league. Like, and then he shows up with 300 plus yards and 3 touchdowns. Like, who the fuck is Jared Stidham? Like, seriously? None of us saw that shit happening. Well,
again, it was the shocking thing of it being his first start. George, I'm going to save your Kelsey comment for later because I have a fun little segment we're going to do at the end of the show, and it's going to kind of play into that. So I'm going to save that one for a little bit later. We'll give George some good juju here. He's up 30. He has Burrow and Higgins. All his opponent has left is Diggs. He survived the JJ thing. I was just about to ask if anybody survived JJ, but good on you, George. I think you can pretty well put that one to bed. Obviously, we don't count our chickens early here, but I think it's going to work out quite well for you. Josh, we call it the hangover. It's the biggest head scratchers of the week. You have some really good ones. I'm actually going to get us started on this one because my goodness, was I super hyped to see Justin Fields go for 105 rushing yards in the first 15 minutes of a game. That's 10 fantasy points, Josh. That's me laughing in your damn face with you when you throw in the Cole Kmet touchdown saying Josh went against his own advice and said start Jared Goff over Justin Fields, even though we knew the rushing upside was 10 fantasy points. My guy, Justin Fields might go for 40 rushing points on the ground today. The best game of my life. I couldn't wait for it. Yeah, he finished the game with 18 fucking fantasy points. He got 16 of those 18. He got 16 of those fantasy points in the first quarter, folks, with the Cole Kmet touchdown and the 10 rushing points. And that doesn't count bonuses based on just like basic scoring. What the hell happened in that game? Obviously, Detroit's defense had to have 5 bad quarters to then figure out how to play rush defense in the last 3 quarters of that game. Detroit just with an absolute ass beating. Josh, you have this in your notes later on. The man needs to get some weapons. But one thing that worries me about Justin Fields, and I know he's going to get better this offseason, some of the play calling they did makes me so excited for him. I like the coaching staff there. Here's the thing that worried me if anybody watched that game. On the plays after he ran the 60-yard run to the 5-6 yard line, my guy was fucking exhausted and could not throw a pass. They did a David Montgomery run immediately after that, but then they tried to get to some of his plays. He couldn't do it. He was done, and he killed his own team. They settled for a field goal on that drive. Not that it mattered in the grand scheme of the game, but it is a worry that when you have to do that much for your team, when they need you most, when it's a running back, when DeAndre Swift runs them to the 5 yard line, they bring in Jamal Williams or vice versa.
You can't really do that with a quarterback.
Can't really do that with a quarterback who is supposed to be your franchise quarterback. So I have legitimate concerns about Justin Fields as an NFL quarterback. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. But as a fantasy asset, sign me the fuck up.
Like, well, and it's the same thing we talked about like with Lamar Jackson, right? Like, Lamar runs and runs and runs. And, it's one thing when you break off like 10, 20-yard runs, that's great. But like it almost feels like Justin Fields has a 60-yard run every single game 100%. At some point. And you're just tired at that point. Like you're legitimately tired. And it's almost like you just need like a swing quarterback to be like, hey, you know what? Just hand the ball off or, run some like, wildcat trick play gadget thing by the, near the goal line or something. Yeah. Just to give and run down the play clock. That's the big thing. Run down the play clock just to get my guy a little breather.
And that's a really good point. They didn't do that. I remember the segment that I'm watching because I'm watching it all happen and I saw him like sucking down air as hard as he could after that run. And I'm not faulting the guy. It's a big run what he did. But I'm like, he can't run the next play. And they did this little pitch to David Montgomery, who stopped on a 2-yard gain, if that. And then they called a pass play. And I think it was something goofy. It wasn't even like a straightforward pass play. But all I remember is they settled for a field goal there because I was really hoping for a second Cole Kmet touchdown because I was all aboard Cole Kmet this week. So I was really hoping for a Cole Kmet touchdown there, and it didn't happen. But I was very taken aback by how that whole thing went. But Josh, you have some other great ones in here that I think everyone.
I'll start with the Vikings. That was just flat out embarrassing, like straight up. Like, they had no juice going against the Packers. I mean, and again, they watched the Eagles lose. All they have to do is win the next 2 games, and Philly lose this game. They lose next week to the Giants, who just clinched the playoff spot. They could sneak into the number 1 seed and get a first-round bye. And they completely just said, meh. This team is so enigmatic. It's like you either come back to win a close game or get absolutely blown out. They got blown out by Philly. They got blown out by Dallas. They got blown out by Green Bay. And then all of their wins are within like 7 points.
Yeah. And
they have a negative,
they can't sustain this.
They have a negative 19-point differential. Negative 19. And they're the 2 seed in the NFC. Or 3 seed technically now because the 49ers won. Like, what? This team is fraudulent, and we've been saying this all the time, all season, that you cannot sustain those types of close wins against really good teams when the playoffs come around. And yes, George, 1,000%, we found out who Kirk Cousins was. Just absolutely terrible. My next one here, the Dolphins' offensive line.
Yep,
this line was atrocious before this season.
Yeah.
They've improved to bad. And they're still getting their quarterbacks killed.
Murdered. I thought Teddy Bridgewater was dead at one point in that game. He got slaughtered on one play.
When Tua gets concussed and knocked out of these games, when Teddy Bridgewater has to start, he ends up getting hurt and they have to rely on Skylar Thompson. This hands down needs to be priority number 1 for the Dolphins this offseason.
This is literally the second time this sequence of events took place this season. So,
and then like the one game that Skylar Thompson had to start, Bridgewater, who was the emergency backup at that point, Thompson got hurt and Bridgewater ultimately had to come in and finish the game. Like it's one injury after another to the quarterback position. This Dolphins team, I felt like their offense made a lot of strides this year in a lot of positive ways. Their defense definitely needs some work, but I think it's more so play calling than anything. This offensive line needs a complete overhaul, absolutely complete overhaul.
I understand that Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert have put up respectable weeks. I also wonder if they need a more respected running back because I feel like nobody really feels like they need to respect that running game. And maybe that's part of the reason Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson are doing well is because nobody gives a shit. They're just trying to
Well, but I mean, at the end of the day, are you going to drop 7 into coverage to cover Tyreek and Waddle? Or are you going to put 8 in the box to stop Mostert and Wilson?
That's fair. I mean, it's always a pass rush regardless.
Exactly. So, I mean, you could put any running back there. They're not going to see eight man boxes.
Yeah.
Because you have to put so many in coverage to stop Waddle and Hill.
That's fair.
That's why this offense works so well. That's why the running backs are doing so well. But it's the moment when you get a little bit of pressure, you just breathe on this offensive line and they're like, oh, the house of cards falling over. It's absolutely ridiculous. I already touched on Gardner Minshew. I'm not going to dive in anymore here, but that was just an absolutely god-awful game when he, lit Dallas up. Did you see there was the one stat of the first 14 minutes, I think it was, the Eagles had possession for 2 minutes. That just can't happen. Well, and even they had 8 plays.
Yeah.
8 plays. Like it was 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. I'm like, what? This is ridiculous.
Yeah,
it was fucking terrible. And my last one.
Yeah.
Mike fucking Evans. George, you mentioned it. Ryan was all on board. I was absolutely not. Here's why I was not on board. Since week 9, wide receiver 34, wide receiver 40, bye week, wide receiver 75, wide receiver 43, wide receiver 50, wide receiver 25, wide receiver 56. He has not had a top 15 performance in 2 fucking months. And Tom Brady leads the NFL in pass attempts.
Yeah.
Why should I be on board this guy at that point? Like, I get it. He's Mike Evans. We know how talented he is. He's had 9 straight 1,000-yard seasons.
Only wide receiver to do it.
I get that. 1,000%. I get that. Chris Godwin has been the most productive wide receiver on this team this year. Mike Evans is playing second fiddle right now. And he's had 3 top 15 performances all season. He had not had a top 5 performance since like week 3. And then he's the wide receiver 1 in week 17. This, like, I mean, really, it came out of nowhere. In all honesty, it came out of nowhere. Like, I think that's just the head scratcher for me.
George with the best comment of the show, praising me. So Richie James and Isaiah Hodgins did have good games. Richie James was another one I was high on. I was very elated when he scored that touchdown. I would not say you owe everything to me for Mike Evans because you're lucky you're in the championship, as I've been telling you to start Mike Evans for the last month. But I appreciate the praise. It's my favorite thing. I live and breathe off of praise.
And I'll stick on the Richie James over Hodgins thing. Like I was very much on the side of James over Hodgins.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like, yes, James was the right call, but Hodgins still ended up with a touchdown and had a pretty
he scored as well. And
so,
we kind of knew that was going to happen. James, I was banking on targets. I didn't even know there was going to be a touchdown involved. But like I said, I hurt my hand up, patting myself on the back on that one. That was a fun one. So
and my line from the show sheet, what the actual fuck is this wizarding fuckery?
Yeah. I love it.
Mike Evans, man. And it cost me a freaking championship because you had him and started him in the Dynasty League.
Fair enough. And I have him in so many Dynasty Leagues. Most I'm not in the championship because of the months you've led up to. But I want to throw something out here, Josh, because we've talked about this with the what is this wizardry? Do you know that I've pointed out multiple times, Mike Evans has the Deathly Hallows symbol from Harry Potter.
And the Harry Potter
crap. I say that Mike Evans, for those that don't know, I have this like thing. Mike Evans is a Harry Potter fan. He wears number 13. My birthday is the 13th. My favorite number is 13. Mike Evans is probably my favorite player in the NFL. And then my wife absolutely hates him. My wife paid attention to that game 3 years ago where he had like 5 drops in the same game. So she has it in her head that he drops every ball thrown to him. And
he had a drop early in the game in this one too.
And he always does. And so anytime I talk about Mike Evans, she scoffs, she gets mad. So Mike Evans is like the focal point of my house on any given week. And I adore him. I adore everything about him. I think he is easily, I hate to call him underrated because people know how good he is and you can't get past the 9,000 yard seasons thing. But I think there is an underrated level that's actually going to come up later on in the show. Josh, I love that we have just turned our people into just segue absolute champions. So you're going to talk about Manscaped, but before we get to that, if T. Higgins comes through with 2 touchdowns tonight from our buddy Czar, he's manscaping everybody's balls.
Well, Czar, to do that, make sure you go to manscaped.com and enter in that Club Fantasy promo code and save 20% and get free shipping. So as we've talked about, this episode of Monday's Hangxiety is brought to you by Manscaped. Manscaped is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped recently launched the ultimate men's hygiene package, the performance package. The men's hygiene bundle, the performance package. Ryan and myself and our co-host Joe on Wednesdays, we were all gifted this by Manscaped. It's absolutely fantastic. The performance package includes the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, the Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer, the Crop Preserver groin deodorant, the Crop Reviver toner, the Performance Boxer briefs, and a travel bag to hold all of those goodies. Don't have a bad thing to say about this product. The lawnmower is great. Doesn't nick. The blades are washable, waterproof, so it makes for easy cleaning. And I have a huge problem with ingrown hairs, and all of it is it just does the job straight up. And It's a great deal, and including the 20% off is even better. So head over to manscaped.com, use promo code Club Fantasy at checkout to save 20% and get free shipping at manscaped.com.
I love it. All right, guys. So we're going to keep the show moving. Same segments as we've been doing. Josh, it's called the Shot of Espresso. These are the quality performances this past week that got the juices flowing, and I'm going to let you just dive in.
Yeah, I'll start with Richie James. We kind of talked about him. We talked about him all. I talked about him all week. I said Kenny Moore's out. The slot is where the Giants should go. Exactly where the Giants went. He had 7 targets, caught all 7, 76 yards, touchdown, 20.6 fantasy points, wide receiver 8 so far in the week. I mean, from a guy that you grabbed off the waiver wire, putting up top 10 numbers in the championship week, that's what you want in life, right?
Precisely.
Like, I'll take that all day, every day. I don't know what the future holds for Richie James, but it's been nice to see this like bump in production. Maybe it leads to a future contract and the dude gets some sort of money out of this. And, I'm always rooting for those underdogs to get paid because the NFL is it's a short lifespan, short career, so to speak.
Not for long.
Exactly. So that was definitely good to see. I'll dive in really quick to my quarterback on this list before Ryan talks about his. Jarrett Stidham.
Yeah.
32 fantasy points. QB3 on the week. I'm pretty sure Joe said on Wednesday
Joe
that
missed
he was
his
going to
projection.
be a bottom 2 quarterback this week. And he's a top 3 quarterback this week. 365 yards, 3 touchdowns. You don't love the 2 interceptions, but again, he's a backup. It kind of comes with the territory, but 34 rushing yards on top of that. Look, I know Josh McDaniels wants to see what he has, and, we saw a pop performance from Gardner Minshew before he fell flat on his face.
Yeah.
Maybe this is kind of what happens with Stidham. Like, the defense just, the 49ers just kind of said, oh, I don't really have to worry about this guy. We're going to look to next week and locking up a, potential 1 seed when Philly apparently just stumbles over themselves. But yeah, like, seriously, what the fuck? I mean, I know he knows the system. He's been with Josh McDaniels for 4 fucking years from New England to Las Vegas. But, like, I thought the 49ers had a good defense. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. For me, I Russell Wilson, seeing him stand up, and this is going to sound like hyperbole, but I truly don't feel like it is. Big players stand up in big moments, and this was a career-defining moment, and maybe not for his whole career, but for the continuation of his career.
At least for the start of this massive contract.
This man was written off. There are literally, I mean, we fought about this a little bit on Saturday, I think it was, of I brought up maybe Sean Payton going to Denver, and we were like, does Sean Payton want to go there and work with a busted, broken Russell Wilson? And, we got to finally see 68% completion percentage, a little bit of rushing upside, which we haven't seen from Russ since really that injury a few years back. It's been a very rough season, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But now they're calling into question his leadership ability, his motivation for playing football. And these were things we never heard about Russell Wilson before. So I find it all very, very strange. And so to see a game like this, I think it has to breathe some fresh air into there. Denver's next coach has his work cut out for him, but I think it's going to be a little bit easier. I think you're going to probably get a top half of the league quarterback back in Russell Wilson next season. I think it was just an ugly year. And obviously we all agree Nathaniel Hackett was not the man for the job. So.
Oh, no, absolutely not. When I was watching this game, that faux offensive pass interference call on Cortland Sutton, that deep ball, that was the most egregious thing I've ever seen. I'm like, the man finally makes a play and you take it away from him? Why do you hate me? I was so fucking pissed. It was nothing.
Yeah, it was awful.
He went for a jump ball and out jumped 2 defenders. Like, what? I was so fucking pissed.
Yeah.
I'm so mad.
Let's knock out some comments here. So I know you want to get to Swift. I just want to knock this out real quick. Mike Evans, Harry Potter fan. Absolutely, Marvin. Look up his tattoos. Deathly Hallows on the forearm, and I think he actually got character tattoos added in the last year or 2. We're going to throw some good juju our boy Dice Dealer's way. So he's up 25 with just Evan McPherson left. He's going against Josh Allen, Gabe Davis, Jamar Chase, non-PPR. It's probably not good.
Look, you know what? The team that I reeled off in the pour one out section has Jamar Chase on it, so you can pretty much bank on only 4 fantasy points from Jamar Chase.
There you go. But good juju heading your way. I hope it works out for you. I need a big Josh Allen week to keep a championship going as well. If Higgins comes through, oh wait, I got that one already. My bad. And then how about Kenneth Walker?
Kenneth Walker had a good game.
Yeah, I actually almost put him in this section. I thought it might be a little strange because he was actually pretty good last week as well. But last week felt more volume based. This week felt more skill based. He looked like a good running back this week. Yeah. And I think we kind of needed that because we had talked about the rookie wall and everything that he had hit. And we were a little like worried about Kenneth Walker, not as a player. We knew Kenneth Walker is going to be a good running back, but the rookie wall, this, that, and the other. And I feel like he really shut some people up, myself specifically in the last couple of weeks, especially this past week. But Josh, you had one more you wanted to throw in there, which I think definitely needs to be talked about. So.
DeAndre Swift. I'm pretty sure we all talked about benching Swift.
We called him not startable. We straight up we called him.
I mean, at this point, he's a high upside RB2 flex play. I mean, you probably didn't have if you have Swift, you're probably considering him over like a Chuba Hubbard, a Gus Edwards, somebody like that. Like, yeah, I'm gonna play Swift because I know the upside. But he started to come on the last couple of weeks, but it's still been very low volume. It hasn't been it's just been efficiency, right? And, for his part, he was very efficient this week too, but he scored twice. And that's the upside. And that's what DeAndre Swift brings to the table. He doesn't need 25 touches a game, but it's like the way that people drafted him and the way that people talked him up, that's what you wanted. And so you automatically have that in your head that he's going to be some 20 carry bell cow or 20 touch bell cow that, scores 10 touchdowns or so every, in the season. And because of the, resurgence of Jamal Williams, who also had a really good game this week after a lot of people kind of wrote him off, it's nice to see, but I think now this shows that we need to temper expectations for DeAndre Swift.
Yeah.
To me, he's a top 15 running back in any given season. And he has that top 7 upside because we know the efficiency that his upside brings. But you have to deal with these injuries where he's going to miss stretches of the season. And you just have to find a way to prepare for that.
I don't know if Marvin has my ego and likes being told how smart he is on every single time I get the opportunity.
No, Marvin's just really smart and knows Dynasty better than both.
I was going to say, if you guys need Dynasty advice, he is the person you want Dynasty advice from. And I wholeheartedly agree. I held Russell Wilson in the Dynasty this entire season. There's no chance I would sell low. But there are leagues where Russell Wilson, someone right now wants to trade you Russell Wilson because they think they're getting rid of him at the perfect time because he finally had a good game. They're not holding. You need to be making inquiries into Russell Wilson right now in Dynasty.
Yeah, I have Russ on 2 Dynasty teams. The one that I mentioned in the pour one out section. And then I have him in another super flex that I'm in, and I'm trying to work a trade to get Patrick Mahomes in. So I'm kind of like, hey, if I can team Mahomes and Russ can be my 2, I can live with that.
So Josh, I love the people you picked for morning mimosas. And these are the people where they gave us a performance that has us thinking some really good things are coming. And normally it's a week or 2, but I think we're pretty much talking about next season. I'm going to make you get started with Trey McBride because I wasn't.
Oh, that's good because that's who I wanted to start with.
There you go. I wasn't 100% sure. I got Trey McBride, and you guys were a part of this in a league where I had a bunch of early draft picks, and I had a chance to trade back into the 3rd round, and this guy just kept falling. And I said, it's not tight end premium; it's a single tight end. But I'm like, he's the number 1 tight end in this draft, and I have a chance to grab him along with some really nice picks. And I've sat him on my taxi squad. At no point did I ever think about moving him into a lineup. It just wasn't that. But this was the kind of game I needed to see from him to feel like I maybe did not waste a pick. So I was really happy.
Yeah, I mean, and this tight end class is, it's given us a few, guys that I feel like we can look at and say, you know what, there's some potential here. We may not get a Travis Kelce, we may not get a Mark Andrews, but maybe we get a TJ Hawkinson or a Noah Fant, guys that, shine that, maybe that might take 3 or 4 years to really get up there. But there's hope, right? Kate Otten has popped this year. Greg Dulcich has looked really good in usage. And then now Trey McBride is starting to have, he's had a couple pretty solid games here with Zach Ertz out. And, we talked about this, when you have these backup quarterbacks, these 3rd string quarterbacks, they're looking for the safe passes. These underneath routes with tight ends and dump offs to running backs, that's where they're going to live. McBride had 10 targets in this game, caught 7 for 78 yards and scored a touchdown. He was tight end 2 on the week, 20.8 fantasy points. Like, these are the types of games. Hey, touchdown nonetheless. But, like, these are the types of games you want to see, not just from young tight ends, but young players in general.
Yeah.
And so it's nice to see when the starter is down that you have this guy, right? And the Cardinals just signed Zach Ertz to a 3-year deal in the offseason. I think they paid him $8 million a year, something along those lines. Obviously, the Cardinals have not had a season this year that they had hoped to have. Obviously, Kyler goes down with the knee injury. They're sitting at, I think, the fourth or fifth pick in the NFL draft at this point.
Which
you
is
probably
nuts.
are going to go out. Yeah, you're probably going to go out and get an offensive lineman because you need to protect Kyler Murray at this point.
And at that pick, they could easily walk away with the top offensive lineman in the draft. So.
Or they could go defensive end, somebody to replace J.J. Watt. There's definitely some ways that they can work here. That 3-year deal that Zach Ertz signed, it's pretty team friendly. And I know Zach Ertz and Julie, his wife, are gems of human beings, and you definitely want them not only on your team, but in your community. If they trade Zach Ertz post June 1st, there's only $2 million in dead cap, and they save almost $11 million. So if you have the ability to do that on a team that has, I think they're just short of 20 million available in cap space, but it's clear that you need to do some rebuilding, right?
Well, yeah, actually, I'm perfect segue. George chimes in that they need to blow it up. And I'm going to throw one thing at you, Josh, because I have been pro, and this is going to sound so fucking stupid to say, I have been pro Cliff Kingsbury for the last few years and thought that maybe he could do something to make this team better. I'm wrong. Just flat out wrong. All caps, wrong. He's terrible. Do the Cardinals need to blow it up, or do they just need to get a new coaching staff in there?
Well, but here's the thing. If you get a new coaching staff in there, why aren't you blowing it up?
Okay.
Like, you need to get players that
well,
are
how
going to
hard are
fit.
we blowing it up? Are we talking no Hopkins, no Brown? Like, who stays, who goes? Obviously Ertz would be one who would be
I mean,
gone.
I'm looking at moving the older players, right? Like, I would move DeAndre Hopkins. He's going to be 31 next year. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with moving on from Zach Ertz. He's over 30. You know, if you want to sign Hollywood Brown, that's cool. He's 26. Yeah. That's a guy that Kyler can grow with if you think that Hollywood Brown is a legitimate wide receiver 1. But again, the new coach that comes in, if they do in fact move on from Cliff Kingsbury, maybe they move on from Steve Keim too. Let's not forget, he's taking a leave of absence right now from this team. And this is a guy that has, we'll just call them issues. I'm not going to dive too much into it, but I don't want to, make it seem like I'm beating a guy while he's down kind of thing. But Steve Keim has made some very questionable decisions as the GM of this team over the recent years in his tenure there. Like, made a great trade to go get DeAndre Hopkins, but some of the moves that he's, but again, I don't know that all of it really falls on him. His draft picks have been terrible, but the free agent signees have been, I'm going to try to get the pieces that my head coach needs. And that's what you want from a GM. It's just that the head coach is not executing, right? So I'm fine with them deciding to blow it all up because they're really not that good, in all honesty. And they've got some aging pieces. Like, they've got foundational pieces. Isaiah Simmons is great when you use him the right way. Budda Baker is one of the best safeties in the league. But, and then obviously we know you just signed Kyler to a monster deal, so you expect him to be a cornerstone. But outside of that, those are the three guys. They don't have a legitimate left tackle. They don't have legitimate offensive linemen, period. They have an aging running back in James Conner who nobody's going to trade for, so you might as well just run him into the ground. But all the other pieces, they're question marks. They don't have a legit number 1 corner. Byron Murphy's okay, but he's not great. You don't have a stud edge rusher, especially with, J.J. Watt heading into retirement. You just traded Chandler Jones. Like, you need pieces. And
they've added edge rushers in the last two of the 3 last drafts. They've just done nothing. I can't think of any names right now.
Well, they have Zach Allen there now, who he started to look like a semi-decent defensive end. Like, every time I turn on a game, he's in the backfield. And I don't know how much of that is driven by the pressure that J.J. Watt and the attention that he takes. But Zach Allen, he was somebody that I liked coming out of the draft too. I thought he was a high motor guy. It was very much in a like JJ Watt kind of mold, but obviously not to the talent level.
Yeah, the ones I wanted to throw under the bus, Zaven Collins, they drafted to be an edge rusher. He's done not well, and I thought there was one more. And
they drafted Hassan Reddick way back when.
Yeah.
And instead of, making him a pass rusher, they turned him into an off-ball linebacker. It's the same shit they're doing with Isaiah Simmons.
They are wasting Isaiah Simmons.
Yeah, they're wasting talent because they're putting them in roles that they don't belong in. And it makes no sense.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Just fire the whole fucking coaching staff. Get rid of them all. They're fucking dumb.
I agree wholeheartedly. I'm going to stick with the rookies before we get into your veterans. I was very happy to see an involved Tyquan Thornton yesterday. Tyquan Thornton in the dynasty community, and I kind of started off with super fading him because he shouldn't have went in the second round. But then when you saw where he was going in dynasty rookie drafts, he was like falling third, fourth round sometimes. And I'm like, this is a second round NFL wide receiver that I'm getting way later draft capital wise than I should be. And so I ended up getting him in almost every single rookie draft that I'm in because nobody wanted him. And I buy the draft capital thing. And now you're looking at a second round pick who had a awful season, but he's coming out in a game that matters to the team with 7 targets. He caught 3 of those balls for 60 yards, and this is his game. Josh, am I wrong? He was the fastest?
He was the fastest wide receiver in the NFL draft last year, yeah.
Yep, and scored a touchdown. And if you don't follow this Patriots team, Jacoby Myers is a free agent. And then you're talking about Devontae Parker and Nelson Aguilar. There's a chance.
Aguilar, I think, is a free agent too because he's
that's what I was going to say.
Deal 2 years
There's
ago,
a chance.
Free agent also.
Tyquan Thornton might be the only and number 1 wide receiver for the New England Patriots next year. That's not top 20 NFL level, but it's probably top 36 in fantasy. And I think that matters. And it's going to matter a lot in redraft, but it's going to matter a lot for folks who got him for next to nothing in rookie drafts. And maybe he's another one. And Marvin, if you're still with us, correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe he's another buy low candidate where nobody's happy with what they got from Tyquan Thornton this year. Maybe you throw a third or a fourth round at him for a second round NFL wide receiver. Just my thoughts. So
no, I have him in our non-discriminators versus ages league. Mm-hmm. He's chilling on my bench, and I'm like, all right, cool. Maybe I got something here. I've been trying to build some wide receiver depth in that league because I'm so hurting at that position. But there's a lot of stuff that I need, in all honesty. In that
I have 2 teams like that as well. Yeah.
It's like I've got some really good pieces, but they're not pieces in the positions that I need them in. And I'm just like, But I did make a strong trade right before the playoffs, so I feel a lot better about the team. But in any case, no, I'm with you on Thornton. The big thing with him was he's a Baylor wide receiver, and you know how our buddy Joe likes to talk about nobody good's come out of Baylor.
Nobody's had a good player; they'll never have a good player.
He helmet scouts, yeah, exactly. Can't wait to hear his thoughts on Quentin Johnson from TCU in the offseason. Yeah. That's going to be fun. But no, I'll switch over to the veteran wide receivers here. I'll start with Brandon Ayuk. 12 targets, 9 catches, 101 yards, touchdown, 16 rushing yards. 3rd-year breakout. This used to be the rule of thumb with wide receivers, 100%. Right? It took 3 years to really pop, but we've seen so many of these guys pop right out of the gate that we forget that, sometimes young players do take a year or 2 to pop. For Brandon Ayuk, for me, this has been a system problem, not so much a talent problem. It was last year he was in the doghouse because of, attitude or whatever it was. And then there was this whole thing in the, training camp heading into this season where Shanahan picked a new dog to put in his house. And Ayuk was like, oh, finally he's off my back kind of thing. And now with Debo hurt, and it was the same thing last year, right? They were using Debo so much as a running back or, wide back or whatever position they want to call him, that Ayuk was a featured wide receiver. For this team, to me, Brandon Ayuk is better for the 49ers than Debo Samuel. And here's the biggest reason why. Because they just traded for Christian McCaffrey, who can do everything that Debo can do better. Right? That Debo contract is going to come back to bite them in the ass because Brandon Ayuk is now up for an extension because this is now the completion of his 3rd year.
And if you have not watched these games with Brock Purdy, and he did fine with Jimmy Garoppolo, Brandon Ayuk looks like a number one wide receiver. He's running his routes hard. He's making catches over the middle. He's running after the catch. He is doing things that they told us he was going to do coming into the league. He was this bigger, athletically built guy who some people are like, is he just a kick returner? But you just didn't know what you were going to get from this kid. He looks good with this third-year breakout.
Brandon Ayuk is fucking awesome. The 49ers are going to have a very interesting offseason because next year, McCaffrey is counting $16 million against the cap, that average annual value. He's not the $1 million that he is this year. His price tag pops up. Debo obviously just signed the 4-year, $70+ million extension. Ayuk is ready for an extension. You still don't really know what you have with quarterback because you're getting supposedly, Trey Lance back healthy, who just had a second operation on that.
I don't know if you saw that news flash.
And so like, there's still a lot of question marks, but like, I mean, if I'm John Lynch, I'm seeing if I can move Debo Samuel. Like, you went out and you traded all of that draft capital to get Christian McCaffrey. You don't need McCaffrey and Debo. There's only so many mouths to feed in that offense. Just my opinion.
Let's jump into this from Marvin. How are we approaching the San Francisco quarterback situation with Purdy and Lance? My concern, again, is draft capital. I don't know that San Francisco is in a position where they can move on. So I think Purdy just ends up being that beautiful backup. And it's the worst situation in football where the backup is more popular than the starter. But I think it's going to end up being
welcome to Philadelphia.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to end up being Trey Lance pretty easily. But I think the leash is going to be short. I mean, Trey Lance is essentially going in next year to what Jalen Hurts walked into this year, Josh. That like, we need you to prove it, because if you don't, we're moving on. And obviously they weren't moving on to Gardner Minshew. They were moving on to using their draft picks on a quarterback. Where San Francisco, they're going to be like, you got to prove it or we're going back to Mr. Irrelevant back here.
Tell me this doesn't reek of RG3 versus Kirk Cousins in Washington
1,000%.
years ago. Like, remember, they traded up to get RG3.
What a wonderful comparison.
And then spent the 4th round pick on Kirk Cousins. Yep. And Kirk Cousins turns out to be the better option.
And RG3 was mad that year.
And this is the same system.
Yep.
This is the same system because Shanahan was the offensive coordinator back then. And Purdy is coming in as a late round guy who's showing that he can do everything that he needs to do within this system. Now we're going to find out if he's Kirk Cousins-esque in the playoffs, that he can't win those big games. Because ultimately, that's why they gave up all that draft capital to go get Trey Lance, because they feel that Trey Lance's intangibles are what can be the difference in these close games.
There's also a big difference between Brock Purdy this year and Brock Purdy next year. And I kind of made this not comparison, but this analogy on Saturday. Brock Purdy is playing with the house's money right now. Yeah, he has no worries. He is having fun. The pressure is on next year, because then can you do it? Can you steal this starting job? I feel like Brock Purdy mentally is going to go through way more this offseason and next season than he did this season. And we're going to see how he handles it. Can he Kirk Cousins this situation and win the job, or does he disappear like some other backups we've seen? So,
do you think that San Francisco, depending how this season ends with Purdy, do you think they potentially try to trade Trey Lance and recruit some of that draft capital for a team that believes in the upside? Even though Lance has proved quite literally nothing.
I was just going to say, you would have to have some GM who fell in love with Trey Lance during the draft process and was like, I'll still take him. It would be a very, very weird situation. I'm going to just quickly throw Marvin in here before you get to your last veteran that we have seen flashes. He's talking about Tyquan Thornton, and he shouldn't cost you much in Dynasty. So it's definitely someone worth taking a look out there at. And Josh, go ahead and talk about your final veteran wide receiver there.
Last one's DJ Moore. I mean, we've
goodness.
Yeah. And here's the thing, right? Overall numbers, this season's been a huge disappointment for him. Like 873 yards with 1 game to go. Like, he's hit 1,000 yards, I think, the last 3 straight seasons. So from a yardage standpoint, this has been a dumpster fire of a season. But granted, the Panthers offense has been a dumpster fire.
Yeah.
But when they moved on from Christian McCaffrey, we found out that DJ Moore can, in fact, score touchdowns.
The team almost has an identity.
Yeah, it's DJ Moore. That's the identity.
Yeah, exactly.
So like this offense is basically proving that you don't need to pay $16 million for a superstar running back, because Deonta Foreman and Chuba Hubbard, those two combined, are getting the job done at running back.
Handling business.
And DJ Moore, being the focal point of Sam Darnold's attention, is getting it, and he's scoring touchdowns. Before this year, he hadn't scored more than 4 touchdowns in a single season. He's now scored 7 this year, and he has 1 game to go.
Yep.
Like, finally, for everybody that's been banging the DJ Moore as a wide receiver 1 drum, you might actually be onto something.
Yeah. No, and it's funny because he was such a hard player to quit. He reminds me, and their games are different, but maybe it's just the low touchdown upside. He reminds me of a Keenan Allen type where, like, yeah, you're going to get this, but you're never going to get the touchdowns. And then Keenan Allen had that one decent touchdown season. I think he scored 8. And it's like, okay, well, now you can shut up about that. So is this going to be the one DJ Moore season? Or like you brought up with no Christian McCaffrey, are we going to see more of this from DJ Moore?
No, their offseason is definitely going to be interesting. Obviously, we're assuming that they're probably going to go through a coaching change. I mean, I hats off to Steve Wilkes. And honestly, Ben McAdoo too. Like
I was gonna say,
he had this in him.
As much as I want to shit on Ben McAdoo.
I mean, well, and that's the thing is, like, all we're remembering is the tumultuous head coaching experience with the Giants. But he was a pretty decent offensive coordinator with Eli Manning before he got promoted. And for some coaches, maybe that's just they can only focus on one job. Call the plays, arrange the offense, right? Yeah. And McAdoo has made it work with, quite frankly, not a lot of talent on that offense.
Yeah.
So kudos.
Before we get into the last section, because we're going to have some fun, and George, your comment on Darnold's going to come up again later, so don't think I'm ignoring you there, but I do want to work backwards. Dice Dale was wondering what's he doing with Michael Pittman, and I think that's a big question for everybody, because we've kind of talked about what are they going to do at quarterback in Indianapolis. Is it going to be another veteran? Is it going to be Derek Carr? Like, are they just going to keep recycling everybody else's trash? Or are they going to, because they're
sitting
their
right
pick
now,
is
I
working
think,
up.
at pick 5 or 6 in the NFL draft.
Yeah.
So there's a chance that they could, and again, I don't know how things are going to look and shape up with the quarterbacks in this draft. I mean, I feel like Bryce Young is kind of the consensus QB1 going into this draft. I feel like he's probably going to be the top pick of Houston. Then you have CJ Stroud. And you have Will Levis, who I think that there's a lot of back and forth on. I feel like everything that I've been reading is that the NFL scouts love Will Levis, and the Twitter scouts can't stand him.
So he's Mac Jones.
Basically. And, you know, with CJ Stroud, there's a lot of good, but also like, well, maybe he's a little limited with this. But then you have the enigma that is Anthony Richardson, who probably could have benefited from staying in college, even though, you know, there's not really much at Florida right now. But his intangibles are through the roof, but he doesn't have a ton of experience. He's basically Cam Newton with an arm, I think is kind of the layman's terms way for me to describe him. So there's a lot that can shake out. And then obviously you have like the Bears, who presumably don't need a quarterback. Seattle could maybe take a quarterback, or they could just ride it out with Geno and just build the rest of the team. You know, Indy obviously needs a quarterback, but then you have those teams that could potentially try to trade up to get one. So, you know, this will be a very interesting draft at the top 5 when you look at how many teams that will land there that probably won't go quarterback.
And much like Carolina, Josh, you've kind of hit this on the head. We don't know who the coaching staff is going to be there, because I heard rumors. I have my cousin, big Colts fan, like in the Colts community, pays attention to things. I heard rumors, and I don't know how true this is. Jeff Saturday took this job because he is going to likely be a front office, maybe even GM next year. And he wants to know who wants to play for the Colts. He is not going to be the coach next year. Don't know how true any of that is, but just something to throw out there. I don't know what's happening with that entire coaching staff. And how does that, because Pittman is there. Jonathan Taylor is there. These guys aren't going anywhere. But I guess Josh,
Pittman's up for an extension because this is the end of his 3rd year. So,
and then Paris Campbell is a free agent. And I'm not going to say that affects him. We're seeing the first good glimpses of Paris Campbell. And I don't know that he doesn't just stay. But again, with a new coaching staff, That's one of the things you need to
They're
worry
going to
about.
evaluate it differently, correct?
Exactly. And so I find that one very interesting.
Pittman's been really interesting just from the start of the year to now. Like, I swung a deal in Dynasty with Pittman to where I gave up Pittman and received A.J. Brown in a 4th-round pick.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that was before the season?
That was, essentially before this season. Yeah. And I rebuffed in one Dynasty league. It was at the trade deadline. Somebody was trying to go for Christian Watson and offered me Pittman in a second, and I declined.
Interesting.
That I'd rather have Christian Watson.
Now, see, I think I would have taken that trade. So that's very interesting. So yeah, Pittman definitely on the downside if you believe he's a buy low, it sounds like.
That's the thing. Like, I feel like some people are, they get caught in the moment, obviously. And, I think there's a lot of room to work with Christian Watson, especially in that offense. And we've seen the touchdown upside. But I just, to me, Pittman, I've never really thought he was a uber athletic guy. I think he's pretty average athletically. He's a big frame. Yeah. He can make the contested catches. But I think you're probably looking at a scenario where he's Terry McLaurin in terms of overall finishes, which I'm segueing this perfectly.
Yeah, that is so good. But I do want to throw out there my favorite Pittman comparison, and he doesn't give the effort that Mike Williams does, but he is Mike Williams, dude. Like, he's just that. But they need a quarterback who can take care of that. But they need a guy like Keenan Allen, who's certainly not Paris Campbell, to take some pressure off of him. And that's what they don't have right now. Your buddy Jay, fellow Floridian, chiming in that it is certainly time for a rebuild.
So, that's why Anthony Richardson left.
Yeah. He doesn't want to suffer through that. Guys, the final segment is chill the fuck out. I'm going to let Josh go in because he has some really good players. And then I don't know where this motivation hit me this morning, but I have some very
I love it. I was reading through it. I'm like, oh, this is going to be fun. We'll see how many arguments we get into.
Yeah. So go ahead, Josh.
I'm going to start with the tight end position as a whole. Okay. I was going through and I was looking at these scores. There were 20 tight ends that scored 10 plus fantasy points. Okay. Allow me to read this again. 20 tight ends scored 10 plus fantasy points.
And I just want to quickly throw out
this drum every single week that all we want is a tight end to score 10 fantasy points. Apparently we need to raise the bar.
I want to throw out, though, Josh, we just happened to be looking at this right before the show. There are only 7 tight ends in all of fantasy averaging 10-plus fantasy points right now. We were looking at this for a completely different reason.
Yeah. Apparently, the tight ends basically just said, hey, Saquon, JJ, McLaurin, Ramondre, you're giving us your points this week. Yeah, fucking assholes.
Yeah.
Never happening again, guys.
Ever.
Never happening again.
No.
When you find a tight end that scores 10, scoop them up and ride to a championship. Good God. Fucking terrible. All right. And I'll on the sign of people usurping fantasy points. Fucking Daniel Jones. What are we doing here? Fucking 90 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground, 2 more through the air. Granted, the Colts are a mess. Great matchup for him. Here's the thing, and I'm torn on Daniel Jones because I've been a Daniel Jones hater since before the guy came into the league. Like, we did our draft show, Joe and I went in on Daniel Jones. This guy is terrible, not a good quarterback. And you know what? His first 3 years in the league, he was proving me right. He was fucking god awful.
Yeah.
You get a brand new coach that comes in. Apparently, he stops turning the ball over.
He just
needed
a coach to say, stop turning the ball over. And the previous coaching staff
was also contract year. It's also a contract year. You remember when players do really well in contract years and they get those 3-year bridge quarterback deals that are like, you know what? We like you, but we're still not 100% sure if you're the number one guy.
Don't trust you.
Yeah. And then they revert back into a pumpkin. Yeah. That's going to be Daniel Jones. I'm very much sold on the fact that if I have him in Dynasty, and Marvin, if you're still in the chat, I would very much love to hear your thoughts on this one. Because you said Russell Wilson's a strong buy low guy. To me, Daniel Jones is a sell high at this point. Like, if I can get a first round rookie super flex draft pick for Daniel Jones, I'm making that deal 1,000 times out of 100.
Yeah.
Like, I'm doing it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I don't trust him at all. And you know what? Hats off to Brian Dable, because he has had this team playing fucking football this year. Hats off. 100%. And then I'll chime in again on Justin Fields. I know we kind of talked about this. 33.3% completion percentage.
Yikes.
Like, it was bad. Like, they made this deal at the deadline to go get Chase Claypool. They're going to regret this. Massively. That is the 33rd overall pick in the NFL draft right now.
Yeah.
That not worth it. Claypool is not good at football. I'm sorry. I don't care. Oh, well, he's only recently with the team and it's going to take him a while to learn the playbook. No, the guy sucks. He's not good.
Not to mention, it just goes against what we've learned in the NFL. You don't get your investment back on players anymore. How in the world does Pittsburgh get their investment back in more than
they got more than
Claypool?
Exactly. And he really hadn't done anything to show that he was worth more than what he was drafted at. That's where I'm like, what were teams doing? I feel like Chicago was just like panicking because, you know, Green Bay was in on talks and they're like, oh, well, we got to go get this guy before our rival can. Like, Aaron Rodgers wasn't going to make Claypool any better either. Like, I just don't get it.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Anyway.
All right, guys.
But hey, no, real quick. Remember when I said that, you know, the 250 and 3 touchdown floor with Jared Goff was solid? Yeah. Take just his passing touchdowns and his 2 rushing yards, and that equaled what Justin Fields did on the day. And
you called it. Like I said, I thought I had the dub.
Jared Goff at home is fucking money.
What's funny is, I don't know, for those who've watched the show for a while, I mentioned not freaking out after big first quarters. And then I fell for it. So.
Yep, exactly. All I got to say is the Bears have $100 million in cap space. They have right now the number 2 pick in the NFL draft. Please, for the love of God, get Justin Fields some weapons. I talked about this all this offseason, right? I said I didn't think that Fields would be like a top-end fantasy quarterback, not because he couldn't run, but because I didn't think ultimately that he wanted to run. He's deciding to run because he has no other choice. Get this guy a competent offensive line and some weapons, and I firmly believe that his rushing yards will come down exponentially.
This is a question that we're going to probably talk about on another show for a while, but the Bears are likely in a spot to take the top wide receiver in this draft. And I don't know a lot about college football.
You're not taking a wide receiver at number 2.
Oh, are they at number 2? Okay, I didn't realize they were that high up. So, okay.
But here's the thing, though.
You trade back.
They could very easily take this pick, trade back to a team that has a need for a quarterback and move up. I mean, granted, you could end up with the best offensive lineman. You could end up with the best defensive end. Those are all pieces that they need. But set yourself up for not just success this year, but also down the road when you can accumulate those high-end draft picks to move back, you know, whether it's 8 spots or, you know, 6 spots or 10 spots or whatever it is, you can still fill needs, get more additional capital, and then maybe you make a trade like Philly did to get A.J. Brown, like Vegas did to get a Devontae Adams, like Miami did to get a Tyreek Hill, you know, not to go get a fucking Chase Claypool for the 33rd overall pick.
Yeah, that's
trade
the
for difference makers, not Jags.
Well, let's talk about this. I hate to pour salt for Bears fans, but David Montgomery's a free agent. The 33rd overall pick, 34th overall pick could have been Bijan Robinson.
Yeah.
That's rough. And Marvin co-signing with us all day today. I'm loving it. So I know we say smart things when Marvin agrees with them. So
love it.
I'm going to go ahead and jump into this. So this motivation hit me this morning when I was trying to come up with our chill the fuck out players. And it all started with the very first question based on what we've seen recently. So I'm going to turn this into a game, Josh, and we can argue about it a little bit, but this is more just you answering some questions and then us segueing into what next week's show is going to look like. But my very first question, Josh, and this was the inspiration for this game, is Christian McCaffrey the redraft 101 next year, or do we need to chill the fuck out?
He is, because I'm jaded about Justin Jefferson.
So the names that have been thrown out there are Austin Eckler and Justin Jefferson. Now, Eckler, it feels like it's just a season thing versus a player thing, but Justin Jefferson definitely jaded some folks, and let's not pretend people aren't carrying that into next season.
I still feel like with the 101, I'm always going to take a running back. I don't care if it's PPR. And look, we've seen the highs of Christian McCaffrey. We've seen the highs when he's healthy. And I mean, he's still knocking it out. Like, if he had been on San Francisco from the start of this year, he's a better
Justin
season
Jefferson.
than Austin Eckler. Yeah, he has a better season than Austin Eckler. I will put my money on that. Mostly because I know
than
we
Justin
can't prove
Jefferson.
that, yeah, probably. Yeah, I mean, it's just, you know, I will be curious to see what the and we talked about this, you know, throughout the show, what San Francisco does this offseason, because if Debo is there all season with Christian McCaffrey, I might hedge a little bit at 101. But because, again, they're the same fucking players, just McCaffrey does it better, and Shanahan doesn't want to acknowledge that. There's definitely a lot of players that you can put in that category. I mean, you know, as Dice Dealer mentioned, Saquon could very easily be in that category. He's RB5 on the season, and we know what he offers from a pass catching perspective as well as on the ground and touchdown scoring.
There's also landing spot questions with Saquon Barkley.
Correct, because he's a free agent. We know that McCaffrey is going to be in San Francisco. We know that Austin Eckler is going to be in Los Angeles with the Chargers. So, you know, and we'll mostly answer this next week, because I promise you, I'm going to put the 101 in that draft next week.
Okay.
Spoiler alert. But yes, just the upside that CMC brings, no other running back has that.
I love it. And so this is a question we've been debating all season long. I'm someone who's been preaching this strategy for a while. Is Travis Kelce, and Josh, this is not your draft strategy, is Travis Kelce your 102 in drafts after that number one running back goes, or do I need to chill the fuck out?
I don't think he's the 102. I would feel more comfortable at maybe like the 105. I know that feels pretty insignificant, but I still would much, as great as the position.
I was going to say, let's put the players ahead of him.
Yeah. I'm still probably going CMC, Eckler, Jefferson, maybe Barkley, depending on landing spot. Okay, I'd say maybe right now he's my 104.
Interesting.
Because I think right now he's my 104.
Barkley, I could see ahead of him. And
you know what? You could even make a case for Tyreek.
And Jonathan
or even
Taylor.
Devontae Adams. Like, I don't know what their quarterback situations are going to be next year. But, like, it's pretty proven that they're on that offense for a reason. And
what I love, though, is what we just did, Josh, is what we do every season. You said you can make a reason for it. And that's what we've been doing every season, is making a reason for Travis Kelce not to be the 102. Yeah. It's just that points advantage to me. If your league is,
but for me, it's like every time we think like, oh, Kelce had this fucking season, he deserves to be this and that, then he comes back to earth a little bit, and then
that's not even just Travis Kelce.
There's still the positional advantage. Yeah, there's still that positional advantage, but that positional advantage isn't as vast the next year, right? Like, he's scoring 10 fantasy points per game more than the tight end too. You're not going to find that at any other position. At all. But at the end of the day, is that still that amount of points? Is it worth sacrificing to go get a CMC or an Eckler, who you know are going to score 50 to maybe even 100 more than Kelce?
And this was the question George asked earlier, or not really a question, but putting out earlier, that he hasn't scored a touchdown in a while. It's been a weird volume-based season for Kelce, and McKinnon might be cutting into that workload. And what I find interesting, and I brought this up before, McKinnon's a free agent. He's likely to re-sign, but we don't know quite what's going to happen with that.
But then KC's they're going to, draft somebody else to fill.
They have to address the wide receiver position.
They have to address wide receiver. They need to address running back, because CEH clearly isn't it. And they have all this extra draft capital that they got from the Tyreek Hill trade.
Absolutely.
So there's moves they can make.
So my next question is, do we let late season heroics trick us? And I'm going to throw the words once again in here on Cam Akers, and for the first time on DeAndre Swift. Because Josh, you have already poured some water on DeAndre Swift on this show. But one thing we didn't bring up, Jamal Williams is a free agent. Is he likely back? Yes, but he is a free agent. So if you see Jamal Williams leave, and then you have this great week 17 from DeAndre Swift, how are we going to handle the late season heroics from Cam Akers and DeAndre Swift? Is Cam Akers a third-round fantasy pick, a fourth-round fantasy pick? DeAndre Swift, a third or a fourth? Is Cam Akers a fifth, a sixth? Or do we need to let these guys naturally slide back 2 or 3 rounds?
I think Swift, as I mentioned, I still think Swift is in that, RB2 range.
Mm-hmm.
with the RB1 upside because, again, he's that efficient. He's good with the football in his hands. But as of right now, like it's been 3 straight years battling injuries.
Yeah.
And I get it. That's why a lot of people faded Christian McCaffrey heading into this year because he had 2 straight years of battling injuries. We've seen the upside with Christian McCaffrey. That's what makes it okay. It's the same thing with Swift. Like we've seen the upside. That's why I don't hate spending that, 3rd round pick on Swift. I would much rather at this point, I would rather have the wide receiver 1 than Swift. I would much rather have the RB1 and potentially even the wide receiver 1 or tight end 1 than Swift. So that's why I put him in that RB2 range.
Okay.
Knowing that when he's healthy, he can be a top 5 RB, even on 15 touches a game, because that Detroit offensive line is pretty good.
So you look at what we're seeing here from Swift as more of a revelation than an apparition.
Yeah, we need to better understand who he is as a football player. We know he's really good. We have this unrealistic expectation that he should have 25 touches a game. And we just need to understand that not every running back is built for 25 touches a game.
Precisely.
Because their efficiency metrics are going to come down as a result of that. Right? Like Austin Eckler should not be built for a workhorse role. And for whatever reason, he's doing it. Yeah. But a lot of it is on the shoulders of the massive amounts of touchdowns that the scheme that Joe Lombardi runs. It's what I talked about heading into last offseason when Joe Lombardi got there. This is the Alvin Kamara role. Remember when Alvin Kamara scored all those fucking touchdowns? Guess what? Austin Eckler scoring all those fucking touchdowns.
Yeah.
And he's a really good wide receiver. And he's been playing more as a pass catcher role because Keenan Allen has missed half the season and Mike Williams has missed a good chunk of the season. So his receiving metrics had to skyrocket as a result of that.
Yeah.
With Cam Akers, to me, it's about where is he going to be? I don't know where he's going to be because they could very easily move on from him. They've used this end of season as an audition to get trade value for Cam Akers. The Rams need to do something with that offensive line for me to truly want to buy into Cam Akers at this point.
And I think Dice Dealer hits on something here. Dice Dealer was already ready to move on to him as a 4th, 5th round pick this year very quickly. Next year, that leash is even shorter for fantasy managers. So investing high in him feels like a mistake. So that's what I'm worried about with these late season performances. But Cam Akers' entire fantasy hype train is fueled by late season performances. This is like 3 consecutive seasons where he's done this. He's one that worries me.
I'm more on Swift than I am Akers. I'll say that.
Yeah, I should have asked these questions in the other order, but is Mark Andrews still the tight end too, Josh, or do we need to chill the fuck out? Because we've seen emergences from TJ Hawkinson. We still have hopefully the breakout from Kyle Pitts. Is Mark Andrews still the tight end too? Good performance last night in the championship.
In redraft, I think I'm rolling Hawkinson.
Okay.
I think Hawkinson has taken over that role. Dalvin Cook isn't being used near as much in the passing game. Adam Thielen seems to be taking a back seat. This is the Tyler Higbee role in Kevin O'Connell's.
Thielen's like 33 next year.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, he's getting up there in age. Obviously, they made the move to go get Hawkinson. They gave up the draft capital. I think both are great, but I think as of right now, and again, this is without doing projections or anything like that.
Yeah,
I think Hawkinson's probably going to be my tight end 2 next year.
Okay. This one's for me. 9 straight 1,000-yard seasons. Is Mike Evans a top 25 all-time wide receiver? He is currently 44th in yards, total yards in the NFL. He has 10,425 yards in NFL history. He is the 44th highest wide receiver. This is a star-studded list of names. But that top 25, with the exception of maybe Antonio Brown, who is 24, Brandon Marshall, who's 23, these are Hall of Famers, just flat out Hall of Famers. Though I did just notice that a few of these guys are tight ends. I must have just all-out receiving leaders on here. But regardless, is Mike Evans a top 25 wide receiver in NFL history? My answer is unequivocally yes.
I don't think he's top 25, but I think he can get there.
Okay. Can he get there if Tom Brady is not the quarterback next season?
That's the big problem. I mean, Mike Evans is, he stuck it out. He's been there through the ups and the downs, really. Obviously, you're starting to get to the point in his career where he's yielding a lot more to Chris Godwin.
Yes.
And there's a lot of things that Godwin does better than Mike Evans.
Mike Evans' game is also not a game that suits itself to older wide receivers, and that's going to be
exactly. And I think he's going to fade a lot quicker than some of these other wide receivers have. I kind of look at him kind of similar to like Frank Gore among running backs, right? Like Frank Gore, we know was really, really good for a really long time, but most people would say he was never truly great. And that's kind of the energy that I get with Mike Evans. Like he's been really good. He's been really good, but the greatness seems to kind of be falling by the wayside. It's like every time he has a really good season, you're talking about 2 or 3 other guys, maybe even 4, that put up like either career years or have just really, truly great seasons. Like you respect the consistency, but the greatness to me kind of lacks.
The 1 year, the 30-30 year for Jameis Winston, Evans got hurt for the last 3 games, which really put a damper on everything there too. But I love the guy. He is 1,900 yards away from being a top 25 yardage wise guy. I think he's going to hit it. It's just, is it going to take him just 2 more years to hit it? How long does the streak continue? I'm very interested to see. Josh, this one was for you. Are both Eagles wide receivers top 3 as in first 3 round picks next year, or do we need to chill the fuck out?
Chill the fuck out. It's not happening. I think this year is kind of an anomaly. I think now defensive coordinators are going to go back and they're going to start looking at tape and they're going to say, all right, this is what we need to do to slow down Jalen Hurts. And I think ultimately that probably is going to lead to a little bit more rushing yards. I have a ton of respect for Devonta Smith. I love him as a player, love him as a person. Don't love that he hates our fantasy teams, but it is what it is. I think that's just an Alabama thing. That's what I'm coming. Ridley was the same way, and Josh Jacobs. We already know that story, but no, I think that you have 2 really good wide receivers, but this is not T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. This is not a team that's going to throw 600 times a game, and that ultimately is going to cap the upside. But let's also keep in mind too, so much of this is because Dallas Goedert missed time. If Dallas Goedert plays a full season, we're not talking about Devonta Smith as a top 15 wide receiver.
What a wonderful point. Yeah, because right now they're both top 11, top 10 wide receivers in fantasy and full PPR. So what a wonderful point about the missing time of Dallas Goedert, though. So, Josh, you kind of alluded to this one earlier, and this one kind of came to me when I was just looking over rankings, because I used to be a big fan of the guy, and then it just kind of clicked for me a few years ago that he's not what the fantasy world wants to treat him. So, Josh, is 2023 the year when fantasy world and fantasy Twitter realize that Terry McLaurin is the wide receiver 20 at best? Or should I chill the fuck out because nobody's going to be that rational?
Well, yeah, nobody is that rational. People are still hanging on to DJ Moore. But I will say that, with the influx of talented wide receivers over the last couple of classes, I think now you're finally going to start saying, all right, McLaurin, we know has the skill set and he can do it, but he's just limited by the offense. And you're going to start seeing these younger guys like a Christian Watson, for instance, like people are going to start hyping him up because, he's had a year under his belt. He scored a ton of touchdowns. Now, presumably he'll still have Aaron Rodgers throwing the quarterback or throwing the football to him. You're going to start seeing guys do that. But I mean, look at what Jahan Dotson has done this year. Jahan Dotson's had a really good season, but the biggest question mark in Washington is still going to be who the fuck is throwing the football?
Who's the quarterback?
Plain and simple. I think McLaurin he's a good wide receiver 2 in fantasy. That's about it. And probably I wouldn't draft him to be more than a wide receiver 3, hoping he's a wide receiver 2, if I'm being quite honest.
But the question is, Josh, will fantasy Twitter agree with you next year?
Fuck no.
All right.
Fantasy Twitter is the most irrational place, and I fucking love it.
Absolutely. Josh, did Sam Darnold do enough over these last 3 weeks to trick the Carolina Panthers into being their starting quarterback again next year?
Did you see all those turnovers yesterday? No, he hasn't tricked them. The Panthers are just hoping, or they're realizing that, this late season surge, all right, it makes the money that we're paying him somewhat worth it. That's that.
All right. This one was interesting. I was going through points per game, and Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, and Patrick Mahomes have run away in points per game at fantasy quarterback. Josh, should 3 quarterbacks be taken in the first 4 rounds of fantasy football next year?
Should they be? Probably not, but they probably will. I think this has been the year because everybody was like, oh, well, I'm going to sit and I'm going to wait while you guys take this and I'll invest in the Staffords, the Cousins, the Bradys, the Rodgers. Not a really great year for aging quarterbacks, let me tell you.
No.
It really has not been. Some of those guys might bounce back. Some of them may not. But I think that, and sometimes we're not as reactionary as we want to be, but oftentimes we are, and not always for the right reasons. But I think this is going to be 2023 might be a year when, kind of like you draft tight end early for that positional advantage, right? I think you're seeing this year that there are certain quarterbacks where you get a positional advantage. And these running quarterbacks, while, Fields was a great value, but we've seen the downfalls to Fields because he has no weapons. We've seen the downfall of Lamar Jackson, him getting hurt. Maybe it's a contract issue why it's taking him so long to come back. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But even then, he was bad when he was playing because he doesn't have any weapons outside of Mark Andrews. Trey Lance gets hurt. So some of these guys that offer that rushing upside, they're not giving the overall advantage that you had hoped by investing in them. And on the flip side, you take a guy like Justin Herbert, who you think would be giving you the advantage that he should. Where's the touchdowns been? What the fuck's going on there? So at this point, if I can leave a draft with Mahomes, Allen, or Burrow, I think I'm doing it.
My mood on Justin Herbert over the last month has changed so drastically. It is incredible. And that's what I was kind of leaning to with this question, Josh, is even us who are take quarterback late. And that's why I made it the 4th round, because I knew you wouldn't agree to the 3rd round. But I wonder, I used to always say if an elite QB falls to the 5th, I'll start to pull the trigger, because by that time I typically have my 2 running backs and I don't care what else.
Yeah.
I think the 4th, when you look at especially a guy like Josh Allen, who's now on his 3rd consecutive year of doing this, I think he's proven enough that he is an advantage. And our Chris Molina has pointed out that Josh Allen is an advantage at the quarterback position. And I really am agreeing with that. And the last one is for fun. If you guys don't follow our Wednesday show, our 3rd co-host, Joe Zolo, is the most bullish motherfucker on the face of the planet when he gets opinions in his head, Josh. And one I have thought about with him for all the years you've had me on the show, this might have come up in our first episode together ever, is he does not believe that Mike Tomlin is a good NFL coach. And Josh, I'm going to be honest, I don't even remember your opinion on the situation because I spent so much time fighting with Joe. But my question to you is Mike Tomlin's now 16th consecutive winning NFL season, and the fact that he is now 16th in coaching wins behind Paul fucking Brown. I'm wearing my Maslin Tigers shirt because I knew I was bringing up Paul Brown on this show. Is that going to be enough for Joe to agree that Mike Tomlin is a good NFL head coach, or should I chill the fuck out?
Well, you should probably chill the fuck out because Joe never admits when he's wrong. I think Tomlin is a good coach. I don't necessarily think he's a great coach, but I think that, Joe being a Patriots fan, he's been very spoiled by great coaching with Bill Belichick. And the fact of the matter is, as a head coach in the NFL, if you get 1 Super Bowl ring, that separates you from the pack, because very few have multiple Super Bowl rings, especially nowadays where there's so much parity because of the salary cap, because of the playing surfaces that cause exponential injuries, all of these types of things. Tomlin has, the defense has always been what's going to run the Steelers organization. They're a ground and pound team, and that's where they invest. But in this day and age in the NFL, how you win games is by throwing the football. Until they put together an offensive coordinator that comes in that says, you know what, we need to open up this offense. We need to throw the football more. They're not going to be a great team. And that, I think, is ultimately what's going to be the difference in the career of Mike Tomlin as a head coach. I mean, granted, if this had been any other organization that Tomlin coached for, I guarantee you he doesn't sniff 6 years.
Yeah.
Because all I see was 16 straight winning seasons. That's a long time to be mediocre.
It's fair.
I mean, really.
He's also the 16th leading in NFL head coach wins. So
yeah, because he has a patient organization. That's it.
That's fair. That's
there. No other organization gives this guy 16 years. I mean, for as great as Andy Reid is, even Philly moved on after 12 years. Like it happens.
You said the right name there because obviously I'm loyal to Andy Reid above all else, and so that's a really good point.
And Andy Reid has all of one Super Bowl.
Yeah,
that's kind of the point that I'm getting at. So
that's a good comparison because Andy Reid and Mike Tomlin, essentially the same guy with two very different philosophies.
Yeah, but one is a defensive guy, one's an offensive guy. Like
very interesting.
Tomlin got lucky inheriting Big Ben.
100%.
Andy Reid drafted Donovan McNabb,
and then Patrick Mahomes.
Honestly, got the best out of Donovan McNabb. As much as I love McNabb, he was definitely
without a doubt. No, they're tied.
Top upper echelon. Yeah, but then drafted Patrick Mahomes, and look at this. Like he's made these, and Mahomes wasn't the consensus QB1 in that draft either.
No, he was not.
He
was for Andy Reid though, and kudos to Andy
that's
Reid.
what matters. And Andy Reid said, "You know what? We're going to make some magic with this guy," and they've made some fucking magic. So, and that to me, that's the big difference when you look at guys like an Andy Reid versus a Mike Tomlin. Like Andy Reid is going to put guys in a position to succeed, especially on offense. On defense, it's like, I can score 42 with my offense as long as my defense only gives up 39.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, we're not going to do any of our end of the show segments. Thank you to Manscaped for making this show happen all year long. We're going to have something special for you next week. But I do want to kind of get a couple of our things in here. First and foremost, Czar, yes, Monday Night Miracles. Let's make them happen. Let's get out of here with some Club Fantasy Championships. Make sure you guys come back. Let us know how many you've won. And Czar, we appreciate you tuning in. Me and Josh do this show 100% to vent. It was an idea Josh had where we just wanted to come out here. We know you guys are all pissed on Monday mornings. We're pissed on Monday mornings. We got the free time. So we appreciate you guys tuning in every single week. This show would suck without you guys. We'd still probably do it, but you guys have really made this a fun ride to end the year. So
love it. Appreciate all you guys. And
absolutely.
Girls, if you're listening.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody who's out there. Yeah, I tend to say guys. I need to stop that. Speaking of everybody, guys and girls, Josh had a wonderful idea that we are going to do next week because next week does not matter. If you're in a fantasy championship, stop it, get some help. But the long and short of it is next week doesn't matter. There's not going to be a ton to react to. But Josh said, why don't we, knowing everything that we know from the 2022 season, I can't talk. Why wouldn't we do a mock draft? Why don't we go ahead and because this show took the place of Mock Draft Monday, and we're going to invite Austin back, and we're going to see if we can get Evan back, and Austin has already agreed to come back. And we are going to do a mock draft next Monday at 11 o'clock. It's a 2023 mock draft for your standard redraft league, but we're going to do it knowing everything that we know from what just happened in the season, and we're going to pretend that Cooper Kupp's not injured, all that fun stuff. That's why I'm saying it's a 2023 mock draft. So we're going to take everything we know, and it's going to answer a lot of those questions on the chill the fuck out section. So that's going to be a really, really fun show. You guys need to tune in. I'll make sure I drop the link for the draft early on Monday, so you guys can try to chime in. And after Josh creates the room, I'll drop the link in the room before I even drop it out on Twitter, so some of you guys can chime in. So make sure you have the notifications on for this show when it's going to go live, and come here and you'll find the link if you guys want to draft with us next Monday. Josh, you got parting words for our friends and family?
I do not. I'm just sour and bitter of all my great freaking championship teams that fucking shit the bed and make me look like an absolute dumbass throughout this entire year. And hey, yeah, kudos though. It took 17 weeks for people to realize that I'm a fraud. So there's that.
There you go. And it took 17 weeks for me to be right about Mike Evans. So it worked out really, really well for me that George is now my number one fan because I just kept saying the same thing over and over again until it was right. So.
I do want to bring up these really quick. Dice Stealer, he chimes in. It's actually the late 60s rather, but three coaches since this basically in 50 years. Like that's what I'm talking about with the Steelers. They want consistency, and they want it in spite of any real success. Like, and it's and I'm not saying that Tomlin hasn't been successful. Like he has.
You keep saying that, and it is bothering.
Like he has, but it he's had the couple division wins. He's this and that, etc. But like, of all of these like great teams that we've had throughout the years, are any of them Steelers teams with Mike Tomlin at head coach? Even the year that they won the Super Bowl, was there a great Steelers team?
But is Tomlin an unfortunate bystander of the Bill Belichick years? And obviously, if you need to be great, you have to beat great. So I guess
that's kind of the point that I'm getting at. Like, I mean, there are great Patriots teams that didn't win a Super Bowl. And I talk about those teams before any Mike Tomlin led Steelers team.
But we're arguing about great. Joe won't even call him good.
Yeah, that's just dumb. So there's that. And then we'll end on this question. Rank your top 5 fantasy QBs in order for next year. Ryan, start at 5 and go up to 1.
5 to 1 is Fields, Burrow, Mahomes, Hurts, Allen.
Yeah, that 5 is where I'm struggling, because my top 4 in no particular order, Allen, Burrow, Mahomes, Hurts. And I think that seems pretty consensus. 5 is kind of up and down for me. Like with Fields, I'm on board, but I got to see the weapons.
Yeah.
With Kyler, how does he bounce back from the ACL? Herbert, can he finally throw some fucking touchdowns?
Herbert left because, Josh, we had this argument 2 weeks ago, and Herbert was my one who I put in over Fields, and I'm off that train.
Yeah. So I mean, there 5 I think is that sweet spot, right? That's the one where it could go 80 different directions in my opinion.
Well, the biggest question about this, wonderful question, George, but this leads it to, for me as a fantasy analyst, a way stranger question or worse question is, what is their ADP? Because
absolutely,
those 4 guys, the top 4 that we all agree on, I'm worried they're all top 5 picks, where most fantasy analysts and most good fantasy players won't take quarterbacks that high. So then, is the inconsistency of Justin Fields worth the 3 to 4 rounds that you get to save in draft capital? And I think that's the best part of that question. So, and that's something
right
we're
now,
gonna answer next week.
Yeah, and right now, Geno Smith is QB5 on the year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Followed by Kirk Cousins, Trevor Lawrence, Jared Goff, Fields at 9, and then Daniel Jones. I mean, you know what? I think you could make a case for Trevor Lawrence at 5.
He was one that struck me. For fantasy, I'm always going to weigh high on rushing upside.
And I get that. 1,000%. 1,000%.
Yeah. I love it. Josh, what's your prediction for Monday night?
Probably a huge disappointment.
Pain. I was going to say, to quote Rocky.
Pain. Yeah. Pain. No,
think,
it's a home game. I'll take the Bengals. I'll take the Bengals winning this one. Hopefully, I want to see a rematch in the playoffs, and that's probably where I would side with the Bills.
I think Joe Burrow throws a crucial pick 6 again, and I think the Buffalo Bills take it. I think the over is very safe in this game. I think both teams score over 25 points, and we're seeing 50.
If you're relying on Joe Mixon, sorry, that's my one prediction.
I am. I need 20 points. I know it's not happening, though.
No,
I've already counted that one as a
loss.
Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. This week, we're still going to be running most of our regular schedule, as far as I know. Josh, correct me if I'm wrong. You're not going to see
we'll have Wednesday, no pun intended. We'll have Saturday airing of the grievances. Those are going to be the only ones this week.
Okay, so I'm not even close to our regular schedule, because you're going to see a bunch of our articles fall off as well. But the long and short of it is, guys, the fantasy season is over, but Club Fantasy is still going to be here with you. You're going to see our Wednesday show every single week. You may see some sporadic shutoffs on some of our other shows, but our Wednesday show is 51 weeks a year. We only take off Thanksgiving. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Tell your friends, hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet. Guys, have a great Monday. Good luck. Hope those Monday miracles shake out.